His name was Nathan Hale. He was 39 years old, and he lived alone on a quiet stretch of land west of Cedar Falls, Montana, where the wind crossed the wheat fields like it was searching for something it had lost. The farm was not much by most people's standards. A weathered white house, a red barn leaning slightly to the east, 2 horses, 1 milk cow, a chicken coop that needed repairing every spring, and a field of winter wheat that gave him just enough reason to rise before sunrise and keep breathing until dark. People in town did not call him Nathan much anymore. They called him the doctor who buried his own family. They never said it to his face, but he saw it in the way their voices softened when he passed, in the way women stopped speaking when he entered the mercantile, in the way old men removed their hats too slowly, as if grief still stood beside him like a second shadow. 10 years earlier, Nathan had been a physician, not a rich one, not a famous one, just a man with steady hands and a wife who believed those hands could save anyone. Her name had been Margaret. Their little boy was named Thomas. Fever took them both in the same winter. Margaret first, Thomas 9 days later. After that, Nathan stopped practicing medicine. A man can only fail to save what he loves once before the whole world starts sounding like an accusation. So he came west, bought a farm no one else wanted, worked until his hands cracked, slept when exhaustion finally made memory quiet, and built a life so small that nothing inside it could break him again. At least that was what he told himself. Then one evening in late October, as the sun was falling behind the wheat and turning the whole field the color of old gold, Nathan saw a young woman standing at his front gate. She had no wagon, no horse, no companion, only a small brown suitcase gripped in both hands and a wool shawl pulled tightly around her shoulders. She looked like she had walked the last mile on pride alone. Nathan had been fixing a broken fence rail near the barn. He set the hammer down slowly. For a moment, he did not move. Strangers rarely came this far out unless they were lost. This girl did not look lost. She looked like she had reached the very last place left to go. Nathan crossed the yard, stopping several steps away so he would not frighten her. The young woman lifted her face. She was perhaps 24, brown hair pinned back poorly, as if she had done it in a hurry, gray eyes tired from crying, but dry now, the kind of dry that came after tears, had already done all they could. Nathan spoke first. "Are you looking for someone?" Her fingers tightened around the suitcase handle. "Are you Nathan Hale?" He nodded. She swallowed. "My father said you needed a wife." The words hung between them. The wind moved through the wheat. Somewhere near the barn, a horse stamped once against the earth. Nathan did not laugh. He did not ask if he had heard her wrong. He only looked at the girl standing by his gate with worn boots, trembling hands, and a sentence no stranger should have known how to say. Then he asked quietly, "Who was your father?" Her chin trembled once before she answered. "Samuel Whitaker." Nathan felt the name strike somewhere deep in his chest. Samuel Whitaker, a man with rough hands, a loud laugh, and the kind of courage that made other men ashamed of their excuses. 8 years earlier, during a flood outside Fort Laramie, Samuel had dragged Nathan from a collapsed medical tent after the river tore through the camp. Nathan had been pinned under a beam, his leg broken, water rising around his chest. Every other man had thought him dead. Samuel had gone back, not because anyone ordered him to, not because anyone was watching, but because Samuel Whitaker had never been able to leave a living soul behind. Nathan owed him his life, and now Samuel's daughter stood before him with nothing but a suitcase and a sentence that made no sense. Nathan's voice changed when he spoke again. "Samuel is dead." The girl lowered her eyes. 3 weeks ago, fever. Nathan looked away toward the darkening field. For a moment, he was not on his farm anymore. He was back in mud and rain and broken canvas, hearing Samuel's voice above the floodwater. "Hold on, doctor. I did not come back for you just to let you die now." Nathan drew a slow breath. "What is your name?" "Abigail. Abigail Whitaker." She said it carefully, like it was the last valuable thing she owned. Nathan looked at her suitcase. "How long have you been traveling?" 2 days. "Did you eat today?" She did not answer. That was answer enough. Nathan turned toward the house. "Come inside." Her head lifted quickly. "I am not asking for charity." The words came sharp, too sharp. Nathan paused and looked back at her. "No." I imagine Samuel Whitaker's daughter would rather freeze in a ditch than ask for charity. Her eyes widened. He said it without cruelty, only recognition, because he knew men like Samuel, and he knew what kind of child a man like that would raise. Abigail's grip loosened slightly on the suitcase. "Then why would you let me in?" Nathan looked at the farmhouse behind him, at the empty windows, at the porch chair no one had sat in for years, then back at her. "Because your father once carried me through a flood when I could not stand, and because the sun is going down." That was all he said. For a long moment, Abigail did not move. Then, slowly, she reached inside her coat and pulled out a folded envelope. The paper was cream-colored, creased at the edges, protected carefully despite the journey. Nathan saw his name written across the front. Nathan Hale. Samuel's handwriting. His throat tightened. Abigail held it out. "He told me to give this to you when I reached your farm." Nathan took the envelope, but before he could turn it over, she spoke again. "There is something written on the back." Nathan flipped it. Across the sealed flap, in Samuel Whitaker's firm hand, were 7 words. "Do not open until she trusts you." Nathan stared at the sentence once, then again. Abigail watched him closely. "I do not know what it means." Nathan ran his thumb along the sealed edge. Samuel had sent his daughter across the territory to a man she barely knew. He had told her Nathan needed a wife. Then he had left behind a letter Nathan was forbidden to open. Not until she trusted him. Why? What had Samuel known? What had he feared? And why had he believed Nathan Hale, a man who had failed his own family, could protect the only family Samuel had left? Abigail's voice came softer now. "Are you going to open it?" Nathan looked at the seal. Then he slipped the envelope into the inside pocket of his coat. "No." She seemed surprised. "Why not?" "Because your father asked me not to." Something in her face changed. Not trust, not yet, but the first small crack in fear. Nathan stepped toward the gate and reached for her suitcase. She held it tighter. "I can carry it." "I know." "Then why are you taking it?" "Because the walk to the house is muddy." For the first time, Abigail almost smiled. Almost. Then she let him take the suitcase. Nathan started toward the porch. After a few steps, he realized she was not following. He turned. Abigail still stood beside the gate, looking at the house as if crossing that yard might cost her the last part of herself. Nathan understood. There are moments in life when a person does not merely enter a house, they leave behind everything they were trying to survive. He kept his voice low. "You can stay tonight. Nothing more has to be decided before morning." Abigail looked at him. "And if morning changes nothing?" Nathan held her gaze. "Then we will decide again." The wind moved between them, cold, restless, full of winter coming. At last, Abigail took one step forward, then another. Nathan opened the front door and stood aside. She crossed the threshold with her suitcase in his hand, and her father's secret letter hidden against Nathan's heart. Neither of them knew it yet. But Samuel Whitaker had not sent his daughter to Nathan Hale because Nathan needed a wife. He had sent her because both of them were standing at the edge of a life they thought was already over. And behind that sealed letter was a truth that would change everything. The first morning felt awkward, not hostile, not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. Nathan had spent nearly a decade waking to an empty house. Now there was another pair of footsteps upstairs, another cup sitting on the kitchen table, another presence moving quietly through rooms that had forgotten what company sounded like. When he came downstairs before sunrise, Abigail was already awake. She stood near the stove wearing the same traveling dress from the day before. A kettle steamed gently between them. Neither spoke at first. Nathan poured coffee. Abigail accepted a cup. The silence lasted long enough to become noticeable. Finally, Nathan nodded toward the window. "You slept." "A little." "You?" "About the same." For some reason, that answer made her smile, just slightly, as if she appreciated that neither of them was pretending. Nathan glanced towards the envelope hidden inside the cabinet above the fireplace. He had placed it there before bed. Samuel's letter, still sealed, still waiting, still unanswered. Abigail followed his gaze. "You keep looking at it. Your father made that difficult not to do." A shadow crossed her face. He always believed he was planning 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Usually he was. Nathan looked into his coffee. Yes, usually he was. The morning passed quietly. Nathan repaired fencing near the south pasture. Abigail remained inside, at least until noon. Then something unexpected happened. Nathan returned from the field carrying tools and stopped halfway across the yard. The front porch looked different, cleaner. The broken flower boxes had been repaired. The old rocking chair had been moved into sunlight. The windows had been washed. For a long moment, he simply stood there staring. The house looked alive. Not new, not fancy. Alive. Abigail stepped onto the porch carrying a small hammer. She immediately looked self-conscious. "I hope you don't mind." Nathan glanced around, then back at her. "Mind what?" "Moving things." He studied the house again. "No, actually, I think the place was beginning to forget someone lived here." Something softened in her expression. That evening, they ate supper together. The first real supper Nathan had shared with another person in years. Nothing elaborate. Roasted potatoes, fresh bread, vegetable stew, yet somehow it tasted better than anything he remembered eating alone. Halfway through the meal, Abigail finally asked the question she had clearly been carrying since arriving. "Why did my father send me here?" Nathan set down his fork. "I don't know. You must have an idea." "Maybe." "What is it?" Nathan hesitated, then answered honestly. I think he knew you were in trouble. Abigail looked down, and he trusted me. That doesn't explain why he said you needed a wife. Nathan gave a tired smile. No, it doesn't. The room fell quiet again. Finally, Abigail spoke. My landlord gave me until Friday. Nathan looked up. What? Before I left. 3 days later, and I would have been sleeping in the street. Nathan felt something tighten in his chest. Your father knew that? Yes. And the debts? Abigail nodded. Most of them came from his medical bills. Nathan leaned back slowly. Now pieces were beginning to fit together. Not all of them, but enough. Samuel had known he was dying. Known Abigail would be left alone. Known pride would stop her from asking for help. And somehow, he had chosen Nathan. 3 days later, they drove into Cedar Falls together. Abigail needed supplies. Nathan needed seed and feed. The moment they stepped onto Main Street, people stared. Not openly, but enough. Small towns survived on curiosity. And Nathan Hale arriving with a young woman nobody recognized was enough curiosity for an entire month. Mrs. Walker from the bakery nearly dropped a tray. Old Ben Carter stopped sweeping outside the hardware store. 2 women whispered near the church steps. Abigail noticed immediately. They're looking at me. They're looking at us. That's worse. Nathan almost smiled. By the time they reached the Mercantile, rumors had probably spread across half the county. Inside the store, the owner greeted Nathan warmly. Then his eyes moved toward Abigail and stayed there. Nathan knew exactly what question was coming. Who is she? Before he could answer, Abigail spoke first. I'm Abigail Whitaker, Samuel Whitaker's daughter. The owner's expression changed instantly. Samuel, she nodded. The man removed his hat. Your father helped my family through a bad winter 20 years ago. He never let us repay him. Abigail looked surprised. Nathan wasn't. That was Samuel. The owner glanced between them. Then a slow understanding crossed his face. I see. Nathan knew he didn't. Not even close. But correcting him would only create more questions. So he let it go. When they returned to the wagon later that afternoon, Abigail seemed thoughtful. My father helped a lot of people. Yes, I never knew how many. Neither did he. Probably. Abigail laughed quietly. That sounds like him. The wagon rolled along the dirt road toward home. For a while, neither spoke. Then Abigail asked a question that surprised him. Why didn't you remarry? Nathan's hands tightened slightly on the reins. The answer should have been simple. Instead, it took longer than expected. Because after Margaret died, it felt wrong, like replacing her. Abigail looked out toward the distant hills. My father never replaced my mother either. Nathan nodded. Some people only love once. The words escaped before he could stop them. A moment later, he wished he could take them back, but Abigail merely looked toward the horizon. Maybe. Then, after a long pause, she added softly, and maybe some people stop living before they're actually dead. Nathan said nothing, because the worst part was, she wasn't entirely wrong. That night, a storm moved across the valley. Nothing dangerous, just cold autumn rain against the windows. Nathan sat near the fireplace reading. Abigail sat across from him, mending a torn sleeve. Hours passed peacefully. The kind of peace neither had experienced for a very long time. Eventually, Abigail set down her sewing. Nathan. Yes. Can I ask something strange? You already are. That earned a laugh. A real one. Then her expression grew serious. If my father asked you to marry me, would you have done it? Nathan looked up from the book. The fire crackled between them. Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass. Inside, everything suddenly felt very still. He considered lying. Instead, he told the truth. If Samuel had asked me directly, yes. Abigail stared. Why? Nathan held her gaze. Because he was the best man I ever knew, and because any daughter he raised would deserve protecting. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she looked away quickly. Nathan wasn't certain, but he thought her eyes had become suspiciously bright. Neither of them noticed it then, but somewhere during that conversation, the distance between stranger and friend had quietly begun to disappear, and upstairs, hidden inside the cabinet above the fireplace, Samuel Whitaker's sealed letter continued waiting. Waiting for trust. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting to reveal why he had truly sent his daughter to Nathan Hale. Winter arrived early that year. By the second week of November, frost covered the pasture every morning. The wheat fields shimmered silver before sunrise. Smoke curled from chimneys across Cedar Falls, and somehow, without either of them noticing exactly when it happened, Abigail became part of the farm. Nathan no longer expected an empty kitchen when he came downstairs. Abigail no longer hesitated before speaking. The house had begun developing routines. Coffee before dawn, work during daylight, long conversations beside the fireplace after supper, the kind of ordinary moments that quietly become important. One evening, Abigail was balancing the account books when she frowned. Nathan looked up from repairing a lantern. Something wrong, maybe? She turned the ledger toward him. The numbers were neat, careful, precise. Nathan didn't understand half of them, but Abigail did. These expenses don't make sense. Which expenses? She pointed to several entries. Feed, equipment, interest payments. Nathan moved closer. The bank increased your rates 6 months ago. I know. Why? Nathan shrugged. They said farming was becoming riskier. Abigail continued reading. The crease between her brows deepened. No, something isn't right. Nathan trusted that expression. It was the same look she wore when solving a problem. What do you see? She tapped the page. Someone wanted this farm to fail. Nathan sat very still. A memory surfaced immediately. A familiar name. Harriet Blackwell, the wealthiest landowner in the county. Widowed, powerful, and angry. For 3 years she had been trying to purchase Nathan's farm. 3 years of offers. 3 years of refusals. 3 years of increasing pressure. Nathan finally spoke. There is someone who would be happy if I lost the place. Abigail looked up. Who? Harriet Blackwell. The reaction surprised him. Abigail immediately went pale. Nathan noticed. You know her. A long silence followed. Then Abigail nodded slowly. She was on the church board. Nathan's stomach tightened. The church, the accusation, the dismissal. Suddenly, those pieces no longer felt separate. Abigail looked away. Nathan, there is something I never told you. He set the lantern aside. What? Her hands trembled slightly. When the church accused me of stealing, Harriet was there. Nathan said nothing. Abigail continued. The missing money wasn't hers. It belonged to a charity fund. A fund helping struggling families during winter. Nathan's expression hardened. And they said I took it. Did you? Her eyes snapped toward him. No. Nathan immediately nodded. Then you didn't. Abigail's voice cracked slightly. Nobody else believed me. I do. The answer came instantly, just as it had the first day. Abigail looked down, and Nathan realized something. Every time he told her, he believed her. She reacted as if nobody had ever said those words before. That realization hurt more than he expected. 3 days later, the trouble arrived. A black carriage appeared outside the farm shortly after noon. Nathan recognized it immediately. Harriet Blackwell. The woman stepped onto the porch wearing expensive wool and the confidence of someone accustomed to getting her way. She was perhaps 55, elegant, composed, dangerous. Her eyes moved past Nathan, straight toward Abigail. For several uncomfortable seconds, neither woman spoke. Finally, Harriet smiled, a cold smile. So it's true. Abigail lowered her gaze. Harriet turned toward Nathan. You always did enjoy impossible projects. Nathan's jaw tightened. State your business. Harriet laughed softly, still charming as ever. Then she handed him a folded document. Nathan opened it. His expression darkened immediately. Abigail saw the change. What is it? Nathan didn't answer. Harriet did. The bank is calling his loan. Silence. Cold, heavy silence. Abigail stared. What? Harriet looked pleased. 30 days. The entire balance. Or the farm becomes property of the bank. Nathan continued reading. The numbers looked impossible. Because they were. Years of payments. Years of work. All threatened in a single letter. Harriet watched carefully. There is another option. Nathan looked up. No, you haven't heard it yet. I don't need to. The smile remained. Sell me the farm. Walk away debt-free. Start over somewhere else. Nathan folded the paper, slowly, deliberately, then handed it back. No. The smile vanished. Harriet's eyes hardened. You would lose everything for pride. Nathan met her gaze. Maybe. Harriet turned toward Abigail. And what about you? Do you really think this ends well? The church knows exactly what kind of girl you are. Abigail visibly flinched. Nathan stepped forward immediately. Enough. Harriet studied them both. Then something strange happened. She smiled again. But this time the smile carried satisfaction, not frustration. Satisfaction, as if she already knew something they didn't. Interesting, very interesting. Then she left. The carriage disappeared down the road, leaving only silence behind. That evening, neither Nathan nor Abigail spoke much. The loan notice sat between them on the kitchen table, like a threat, like a countdown. Finally, Abigail broke the silence. This is my fault. Nathan looked up immediately. No, if I hadn't come here. Stop. Her eyes filled with tears. Nathan, stop. The word came firmer this time. You did not cause this, but Harriet knew about me. She knew before she arrived. Nathan leaned back slowly. A thought had been forming since afternoon. Now it finally surfaced. She knew more than she should. Abigail frowned. What do you mean? Nathan looked toward the cabinet above the fireplace, toward Samuel's sealed letter, toward the secret waiting inside. Then he asked quietly, how much did your father tell you before he died? Abigail shook her head. Very little. He only said if something happened to him, I should come here. And he said you were the only man he trusted. Nathan stared into the fire. The only man he trusted. Why? The question returned once again. Bigger now, more urgent. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Inside, the letter seemed almost alive, waiting, watching, keeping its secrets. That was when Abigail spoke. Nathan. Yes. If we lose the farm, what will happen? Nathan looked around the room, at the table, the stove, the books, the home he had spent 10 years rebuilding. Then he looked at Abigail and realized something frightened him far more than losing the land. The thought of losing her. The realization arrived suddenly, unexpectedly, dangerously. For the first time since Margaret's death, Nathan was afraid of losing someone again, and that frightened him more than Harriet Blackwell ever could. The next morning, he made a decision, one that would change everything. Abigail found him standing beside the fireplace holding Samuel's letter. The sealed envelope rested in his hands. She stopped. Nathan. He looked at the words written across the back. Do not open until she trusts you. Then he looked at Abigail. Tell me the truth. About what? Do you trust me? The question froze her in place. For several seconds, neither moved. Neither breathed. Finally, Abigail whispered, with my life. Nathan's heart skipped once, then twice. Slowly, very slowly, he broke the seal and unfolded the letter Samuel Whitaker had written before his death. The first line made all the color leave Nathan's face. Abigail immediately noticed. Nathan. He could not answer, because the very first sentence read, if you are reading this, Nathan, then Abigail finally trusts you enough to learn why I truly sent her to your farm. And beneath that line was a truth neither of them had ever imagined. Nathan read the first page in silence, then the second, then the third. By the time he finished, his hands were trembling. Abigail had never seen that happen before. Nathan slowly lowered the letter. His eyes were fixed somewhere beyond the room, beyond the farm, beyond the present, as though Samuel Whitaker was standing beside them once again. Abigail's voice came barely above a whisper. What did he say? Nathan looked at her. For a moment he could not speak. Then he handed her the letter. Abigail took it carefully. The familiar handwriting brought tears to her eyes before she even began reading. My dear Abigail, if you are reading this, then you finally trust Nathan enough for me to tell you the truth. I never sent you to him because he needed a wife. That was simply the easiest way to make both of you listen. The truth is much harder. 8 years ago, Nathan Hale saved my life. Not once, 3 times. The flood was only the last. Before that, he treated me after a mining accident. Before that, he crossed 30 miles of snow to bring medicine when your mother was dying. He could not save her, but he tried harder than any man I have ever known. For years, I watched him punish himself for losses that were never his fault. And I watched you grow into the same kind of person. 2 people willing to carry every burden alone. 2 people too stubborn to ask for help. 2 people who would rather suffer than become someone else's responsibility. I knew if I left this world, neither of you would choose happiness on your own. So I chose for you. Not a marriage, not an obligation, a chance. The chance I believe both of you deserve. Abigail stopped reading. Her vision blurred. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Nathan looked into the fire. Samuel had known, long before either of them. The letter continued. Nathan, there is one more thing. Harriet Blackwell never stopped pursuing my property after I refused to sell it years ago. What nobody knows is that I kept evidence, records, letters, bank statements, proof that she manipulated loans and forced several families from their land. The documents are hidden beneath the false floorboard under my desk. Use them if she ever comes after either of you. Protect Abigail, not because she is weak, because she is worth protecting. The room fell silent. Abigail stared at the final signature. Samuel Whitaker. The ink looked faded, but somehow his voice felt alive. Nathan finally spoke. Your father was planning this long before he got sick. Abigail nodded slowly. He knew Harriet would come. Looks that way. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Nathan and Abigail traveled to Samuel's old house. The floorboard existed exactly where the letter described. Beneath it lay a locked metal box. Inside were years of records, years of secrets, years of proof. Harriet Blackwell had been pressuring banks, manipulating land values, using influence to push struggling farmers into foreclosure. Everything was documented. Every transaction, every signature, every lie. For the first time, Nathan realized Samuel had not merely been protecting his daughter. He had been preparing for a war, and now that war had arrived, the county hearing was held 10 days later. Nearly everyone in Cedar Falls attended. Farmers, merchants, bank officials, church leaders, even people who barely knew Nathan. Harriet sat confidently at the front of the room until the evidence appeared. Then everything changed. The first document rattled her. The second frightened her. The third destroyed her. By the end of the hearing, the room had turned completely against her. The bank withdrew the foreclosure notice. The investigation began immediately, and for the first time in years, Harriet Blackwell looked genuinely afraid. When the hearing ended, she stood slowly, her face pale, her voice hollow. "This isn't over." Nathan met her eyes. "Actually, I think it is." She left without another word, and nobody followed her. Outside, townspeople gathered around Nathan and Abigail, offering congratulations, offering apologies, offering support. For the first time since arriving in Cedar Falls, Abigail no longer felt like an outsider. For the first time in years, Nathan no longer felt alone. Winter slowly gave way to spring. Snow melted from the hills. The wheat fields turned green. The farm survived. And so did something else, something neither of them had expected. One evening in April, Nathan and Abigail sat together on the porch watching the sunset. The same porch where she had first arrived months earlier. The same gate. The same field. A completely different life. Abigail looked toward the horizon. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I never came?" "Every day." Her answer surprised him. "Really?" Nathan smiled. "Every day. And every day I'm glad you did." Silence settled between them. Comfortable silence. The kind shared only by people who truly belong together. Then Abigail spoke softly. "My father was wrong." Nathan turned toward her. "Wrong. He said you needed a wife." Nathan laughed quietly, a rare sound. Then he shook his head. "No, your father was smarter than both of us." Abigail smiled. "How?" "Because he knew I didn't need a wife. I needed you." The words hung gently in the evening air. Abigail's eyes immediately filled with tears. Not sad tears, the other kind. The kind people wait years to cry. Nathan reached for her hand, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. For a moment neither spoke. Then Abigail whispered, "I love you." Nathan closed his eyes. 3 simple words. 3 words he never thought he would hear again. 3 words he had convinced himself belonged to another life. When he opened his eyes, he saw no fear, no obligation, no arrangement, only certainty. "I love you too." The answer came easily, as though it had been waiting for months, maybe longer. They kissed beneath the fading light, not because they were lonely, not because Samuel had hoped for it, not because anyone expected it, because they chose it, together. 6 months later, the farm looked different. The porch boxes overflowed with flowers. The barn had been repaired. The wheat harvest was the strongest in years. Neighbors stopped by regularly. Laughter had returned to the house. And on a warm September afternoon, Abigail stood beneath the old maple tree with a letter in her hands. Nathan found her smiling. "What's that?" She held up the paper. "Doctor's report." Nathan immediately froze. Abigail laughed through happy tears. "You really are slow sometimes." Understanding struck him all at once. His eyes widened. Abigail nodded. "Yes." Nathan crossed the distance between them in 3 steps. He wrapped his arms around her and simply held her, unable to speak, unable to breathe properly, unable to believe how much life could change. Months later, as winter approached once again, they sat together on the porch watching the wheat move beneath the wind. Nathan rested one hand over Abigail's growing belly. The other held a weathered letter, Samuel's letter. The paper had grown soft from being read so many times. Abigail leaned against his shoulder. "Do you think he knew?" Nathan smiled. "Without question." Abigail looked toward the sunset. "Thank you, Dad." The wind moved gently through the fields. Somewhere in the distance, a horse called from the pasture. The farmhouse windows glowed with warm light. Home, at last. Nathan once believed his life would end with silence, with old grief, with empty rooms. Instead, one autumn evening, a young woman had appeared at his gate carrying a worn suitcase and a sentence that made no sense. "My father said you needed a wife." The truth was simpler. He never needed a wife. He needed a reason to live again. And Samuel Whitaker had known it long before either of them did. If you've enjoyed this journey and stories like this, we'd love to have you join us here at USOS Stories, where every week brings another tale of quiet courage, healing hearts, and the kind of love that finds people when they've almost stopped looking for it. And under the Montana sunset, surrounded by wheat, family, and the life they nearly missed, Nathan and Abigail finally understood something neither grief nor loneliness had managed to teach them. Sometimes the people who save us don't arrive with answers. Sometimes they arrive carrying a suitcase and a promise someone else made long ago.